Sutta number 20, 10.20. Once the Exalted One was staying among the Kurus at Kammasadhamma, a township of the Kurus. On that occasion, the Exalted One addressed the monks, saying, "Monks, there are these 10 ways of Aryan living or abiding, according to which Aryans have lived, do live, and shall live." What 10? Herein, a monk has abandoned 5 factors, is possessed of 6 factors, guards 1 factor, observes the 4 bases or supports, has got rid of individual beliefs or views, has utterly given up longings, his thoughts are unclouded, his body conditioner is tranquilized, he is well released by mind, he is well released by wisdom. These are the 10 ways of Aryan living, according to which Aryans have lived, do live, and shall live. I'll just stop here for a moment. So here, what the Buddha is saying is that Aryans practice these 10 things. But it doesn't mean that all Aryans possess these 10 things. The highest Aryan, which is the Arahant, would possess all these 10 qualities. But other Aryans, for example, the Sotapanna or Sakadagamin or Anagamin, they would have they may have slightly less than all these 10 qualities. Just like the Noble Eightfold Path. If a monk possess the Noble Eightfold Path completely, then he is an Arahant. But other Aryans do not possess the Noble Eightfold Path completely or perfectly. And then the Buddha continued, and how is a monk one who has abandoned 5 factors? Herein a monk has abandoned sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, doubt and wavering. Thus he is one who has abandoned 5 factors. And how is a monk one who is possessed of 6 factors? Herein a monk, seeing an object with the eye, is not elated or depressed, but dwells equanimous, mindful and collected. Hearing a sound with the ear, smelling a scent with the nose, tasting a flavor with the tongue, contacting an object with the body, with mind cognizing mental states, he is not elated or depressed, but dwells equanimous, mindful and collected. Thus is a monk possessed of 6 factors. And how does a monk guard 1 factor? By guarding recollection, or sometimes they translate as mindfulness. He is composed or collected. Thus he guards 1 factor. And how does a monk observe the 4 bases? Herein a monk deliberately develops 1 thing, deliberately nurtures or promotes another thing, restrains 1 thing, abandons or suppresses another thing. Thus a monk observes the 4 bases. And how is a monk one who has got rid of individual beliefs or views? Herein monks, whatsoever individual views generally prevail among recluses and Brahmins, namely, the world is eternal, the world is not eternal, the world is finite, it is infinite, the soul and the body are the same, the soul and the body are different. A Tathagata exists after death, a Tathagata exists not after death, or he both exists and yet exists not, or he neither exists nor exists not after death. All these views are shaken off, put away, given up, let go, abandoned and dismissed. Thus is a monk one who has got rid of individual views. And how is a monk one who has utterly given up longings? Herein in a monk longing for things sensual is abandoned, longing for existence is abandoned, longing for practicing the holy life has calmed down. Thus is a monk, one who has utterly given up longings. And how are a monk's thoughts unclouded? Herein a monk has abandoned thoughts sensual, thoughts malicious, thoughts of harming. Thus are his thoughts unclouded. And how is a monk's body conditioner tranquilized? Herein a monk, by abandoning pleasure and pain, by coming to an end of the ease and discomfort that which he had before, attains and abides in a state of neither pain nor pleasure, and utter equanimity, which is the fourth jhana. Thus his body conditioner is tranquilized. And how is a monk well released by mind? Herein a monk's mind is released from passion, hate and delusion, or greed, hatred and delusion. And how is a monk well released by wisdom? Herein a monk knows for certain, greed or passion is abandoned in me, cut off at the root, made like a palm tree stump, made not to become again, of a nature not to arise again in future. Hatred, delusion is abandoned in me, not to arise again in future time. Thus is a monk well released by wisdom. Monks, whatsoever Aryans have in the past lived according to the Aryan living, all of them lived according to these 10 ways of Aryan living. Whatsoever Aryans shall in future time so live, whatsoever Aryans do now so live, all of them shall live and do live according to these 10 ways of Aryan living. These monks are the 10 ways of Aryan living. That's the end of the sutta. Now I just explain. The first one, a monk has abandoned 5 factors. That means sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness, and doubt. Now these 5 things are called the 5 hindrances, pancha nivarana. And these are the things that obstruct wisdom. The Buddha said, these are evil things. Only when you get rid of these 5 hindrances can you have wisdom. Because they obstruct you from seeing things clearly, from seeing things as they really are. Now, how do you get rid of these 5 hindrances? In a sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha did explain that you must attain the jhana to get rid of the 5 hindrances. So the first one is to abandon the 5 hindrances. The second one, a monk is possessed of 6 factors. Seeing an object with the eye, he is not elated or depressed, but dwells equanimous, mindful and collected. And similarly with hearing a sound, smelling a smell, etc. So here it means guarding, mindful of the 6 sense doors, and practicing. Here in Pali it's called Satto Sampajano. Satto refers to sati, having recollection, and Sampajano means mindfulness or full awareness. Full awareness. These 2 terms tend to come together because when you practice mindfulness, and then you tend to have sati. Sampajano or sampajanya means having full awareness or mindfulness, and sati is to remember to put your mind in the right direction at the 4 objects of sati. Then number 3 is to guard 1 factor. Here this factor is also sati. Sati, recollection. This is guarding 1 factor. Sati is quite important for a monk who is practicing, putting the mind on the body, the feelings, the mind and the Dhamma. And number 4, how is to observe the 4 bases. These 4 bases are the 4 right efforts. Deliberately develop 1 thing, deliberately nurture or promote another thing, restrain or avoid 1 thing, abandon or suppress another thing, This refers to wholesome states and unwholesome states. The first one is wholesome states. Wholesome states that have not developed, you must develop it. They have not arisen, you have to develop it so that it arises. And then wholesome states that have already arisen, you should nurture or promote it so that it continues to arise. And then unwholesome states that have not arisen, you should avoid or restrain it from arising. And unwholesome states which have already arisen, you try to suppress it or abandon it. So these are the 4 right efforts. And number 5, the monk has got rid of individual views. All kinds of views exist in the world. That the world is eternal, the world is not eternal, the world is finite or infinite, etc. These all have to do with an ego. Once you have a view of a self, then you tend to think about all these things. So the monk has got rid of all these views. Number 6 is to have given up longings. Here, longings refers to sensual longings, longing for existence, and longing for practicing the holy life has calmed down. The first one you can understand, sensual objects, longing for sensual things, you abandon. Longing for existence also you abandon when you become an Arya. But the third one, longing for practicing the holy life has calmed down. And this one looks a bit strange. In the first sutta of the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha said that some deva asked him, how did you cross the flood? And the Buddha said, not striving and not standing still, I crossed the flood. The Buddha said, when I strove, I was swirled about. When I stood still, I sank. Thus, without striving, without standing still, I crossed the flood. What the Buddha meant was, if he made too much effort, then he was swirled around. If you make too much effort. But if you make no effort at all, also that means he sank in the middle of suppose a person is trying to cross the river. He make too much effort, he'll go in a circle. So if he made no effort, he'll sink in the water. So the Buddha said, neither striving nor standing still, he crossed the flood. In other words, to have an equanimous mind. If you have too much desire to get liberated for a monk, that is also bad. Having no desire to get liberated, also bad. So the mind must be equanimous, and then only he could cross the flood. Number 7, how are a monk's thoughts unclouded? A monk has abandoned thoughts sensual, thoughts malicious, and thoughts of harming. These are the wrong thoughts. So he has abandoned wrong thoughts, and so his thoughts are unclouded. And number 9, his body conditioner is tranquilized. This one, Kaya Sankara. Kaya Sankara the body conditioner refers to the breath, because the breath is conditioned by the body is conditioned by the breath, and the body exists because of the breath. So the body conditioner refers to the breath, and here it means the breath has stopped, because when a person attains the 4th jhana, the breath stops. So here this Aryan has attained the 4th jhana, and normally that is a condition for an Anagamin and an Arahant. He must, an Anagami, a 3rd fruition, and an Arahant, 4th fruition, Arya, he must attain the 4 jhanas. And then number 9, a monk is released by mind. Here he is released from greed, hatred and delusion, or passion, hatred and delusion. And then how is a monk released by wisdom? Also he is released from passion or greed, hatred and delusion. So these are the 10 things that Aryans practice and all they attain to become Aryans. Some of them you find is refers only to the Arahant. For example, the last two, released or liberated by mind, and released or liberated by wisdom. This only refers to the Arahant. Now the next sutta is number 27. 10.27. Once the Exalted One was staying near Savatthi at Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's park. Then a great number of monks, robing themselves in the morning and taking bowl and rope, set out for Savatthi, questing for alms food. Now it occurred to those monks thus, it is too early yet to range Savatthi for alms food. Suppose we visit the park of the wanderers holding other views. Accordingly they did so, and on getting there greeted them courteously, and after the exchange of greetings and reminiscent talk, sat down at one side. So seated, those wanderers of other views said this to them: Your Reverences, Gotama the recluse thus teaches Dhamma. Come you monks, do you thoroughly grasp all Dhamma? Do you dwell ever and always thoroughly grasping all Dhamma? Now, Your Reverences, we also thus teach Dhamma to our followers. Come, Your Reverences, do you thoroughly grasp all Dhamma? Do you ever and always dwell thoroughly grasping all Dhamma? Herein, Your Reverences, pray or please, what is the distinction? What is the specific feature? What is the difference between Gotama the recluse and ourselves? That is, between his teaching of Dhamma and ours, or his way of instruction and ours. Thereupon those monks made no reply, either of approval or of disapproval, to those wanderers holding other views. But without expressing either approval or disapproval, they rose up and went away, saying, We will learn the meaning of this saying in the company of the Exalted One. So those monks, after ranging Savatthi for alms food, on returning from their alms round, and after eating their meal, went to see the Exalted One, and on coming to him, saluted him, and sat down at one side. Saluted here means paying homage. So seated, they said this to the Exalted One: Sir, here in the morning we robe ourselves, etc., etc. And they related the entire incident and how they went away without answering the wanderers. And the Buddha said, Monks, when wanderers holding other views speak thus, they should be spoken to thus. The one question, the one statement, the one explanation. The two questions, the two statements, the two explanations. The 3, the 4, the 5, etc., up to the 10 questions, the 10 statements, the 10 explanations. Thus questioned monks, the wanderers holding other views will fail to answer, and further will come to discomfiture or uncomfortableness. Why so? Because monks, that is beyond their scope. Monks, I behold not in the world with its devas, its maras, its brahmas, its host of recluses and brahmins, together with its devas and mankind. I behold not one who could convince the mind with an explanation to these questions, save only the wayfarer or one of his disciples, or one who has heard it from that source. Just stop a moment. The wayfarer must be referring the translation for the Tathagata. Just now we also read the word Tathagata is one of the names of the Buddha. And then the Buddha continued, as to the saying, the one question, the one statement, the one explanation, owing to what was it said? Monks, if in one thing a monk rightly feels revulsion, rightly feels fading interest in the world, rightly be released, rightly have sight to the furthest bounds, and rightly comprehend the meaning of things, Then in this same visible state or same lifetime, he makes an end of ill or dukkha. In what one thing? In this, namely, all beings are persisted by food, or all beings subsist by food or nutriment. In this one thing, monks, if a monk rightly feels revulsion, rightly feel fading interest, etc., he makes an end of ill. The one question, the one statement, the one explanation was said because of this. As to the saying, the two questions, the two statements, the two explanations, owing to what was it said? Monks, if in two things a monk rightly feel revulsion, rightly feel fading interest, etc., then in this same visible state he makes an end of ill. In what two things? In mentality, materiality, nama, rupa. In these two things, if a monk rightly feel revulsion, he makes an end of ill. The two questions, the two statements, the two explanations was said because of this. As to the saying, the three questions, the three statements, the three explanations, owing to what was it said? Monks, if in three things a monk rightly feel revulsion, feel fading interest, etc., he makes an end of ill. In what three things? The three feelings, Vedana. In these three things, if a monk rightly feel revulsion, etc., he makes an end of ill. As to the saying, the four questions, the four statements, the four explanations, owing to what was it said? Monks, if in four things a monk rightly feel revulsion, etc., he makes an end of ill. In what four things? The four nutriments or sustenances of food, ahara. If in these four things a monk rightly feel revulsion, he makes an end of ill. As to the saying, the five questions, the five statements, the five explanations, owing to what was it said? Monks, if in five things a monk rightly feel revulsion, etc., he makes an end of ill. What five things? The five aggregates of attachment. If in these five things a monk rightly feel revulsion, he makes an end of ill. As to the saying, the six questions, the six statements, the six explanations, owing to what was it said? Monks, if in six things a monk rightly feel revulsion, etc., he makes an end of ill. What six things? The six spheres in the self, that means the six internal bases. If in these six things a monk rightly feels revulsion, he makes an end of ill. As to the saying, the seven questions, the seven statements, the seven explanations, owing to what was it said? Monks, if in seven things a monk rightly feel revulsion, etc., he makes an end of ill. What seven things? The seven stations of consciousness. As to the saying, there's eight questions, the eight statements, the eight explanations, owing to what was it said? Monks, if in eight things a monk rightly feel revulsion, etc., he makes an end of ill. What eight things? The eight worldly conditions. As to the saying, the nine questions, the nine statements, the nine explanations, owing to what was it said? Monks, if in nine things a monk rightly feel revulsion, etc., he makes an end of ill. What nine things? The nine abodes of beings. As to the saying, the 10 questions, the 10 statements, the 10 explanations, owing to what was it said? Monks, if in 10 things a monk rightly feel revulsion, rightly feel fading interest in the world, rightly be released, rightly have sight to the furthest bounds, and rightly comprehend the meaning of things, then in this same visible state he makes an end of ill. What 10 things? The 10 wrong ways of action or karma. And that's the end of the sutta. So here in this sutta, you find sometimes, like in here, these external ascetics, they think that their teaching and the Buddha's teaching is basically the same. So when they asked these Buddha's disciples, the Buddha's disciples could not answer them. But the Buddha said, you should ask them these 10 things. If you ask them these 10 things, they surely will not be able to explain it. So, what are these 10 things? The Buddha said, if a monk feels revulsion, feels fading interest in these 10 things, then he will be released from dukkha. The first one is all beings subsist by food or nutriment. So, if a person understands that we continue to live because of food, then he will start to feel not so, have such great passion for greed for food. So here is interesting that all beings subsist by food, because some people think once you become a heavenly being, you don't need any food. It's not true. All beings need some kind of food. After later, when talk about 4 things, you will find what are these, what this food refers to. Then the two things is mentality, materiality, nama rupa. Nama rupa, it is said in the suttas that nama rupa arises together with consciousness. Whenever consciousness arises, nama rupa must arise. And when consciousness ceases, nama rupa also ceases. So nama rupa is actually the object of consciousness, vijnana. So being the object of consciousness, it is called phenomena. Phenomena, whatever consciousness is conscious of. And there are 2 parts here. One is the mental part, which is called mentality. The other is the physical part, which is called materiality. So everything in this world, our external world and our internal world, consists of these 2 things, the mental part and the material part. So basically it is the whole world. So if you are tired of the world, you are tired of mentality and materiality. And the third one refers to the 3 feelings. The 3 feelings, the Buddha said, all feelings are dukkha. Even sukha feelings are dukkha in a way, in a sense. In what sense? Because it is impermanent. Because whatever sukha feelings we have, we tend to cling to it. Happy feelings or pleasant feelings, we tend to cling to it. But because it is impermanent, it is a source of dukkha. It will fade. You cannot hold on to it. So it is also a source of dukkha. And of course, the other 2 feelings are dukkha itself, unpleasant feelings. And the third one is neither sukha nor dukkha, neither pleasant or unpleasant feelings. So all these 3 feelings are unsatisfactory. So 4 things. 4 things here refers to the 4 nutriments, ahara. The 4 nutriments that being subsists on. The first one is solid food, like we take solid food. The second one is contact. Because of contact, then you have feeling, you have perception, etc. So contact is considered a nutriment, a source of nutriment, a kind of nutriment. The third one is mental intention or volition. For example, the will to live. That is a kind of nutriment. Then the fourth one is consciousness. Consciousness is another kind of nutriment. So the 5 things refers to the 5 aggregates of attachment. Pancha upadana kanda. 5 aggregates of attachment refers to the body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. These 5 things we take, these 5 aggregates, we take either to be the self or as belonging to the self or as being in the self or the self as being in the 5 aggregates. So whenever we refer to ourself, we always refer to the 5 aggregates. So if a person feels revulsion for these 5 aggregates, then slowly he will make an end of ill, he will be liberated. The 6 things refers to the 6 internal bases. 6 internal bases, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind. If you feel revulsion for these 6 internal bases of the body and mind, then you will also make an end of ill, become liberated. The 7 things refers to the 7 stations of consciousness. What are these 7 stations of consciousness? These are the 7 stations of consciousness where beings can exist. The first one is where beings are similar in body and similar in perception. Another type is the beings are similar in body and different in perception. Another type is where the beings are different in body and different in perception. Another one is where the beings are different in body and similar in perception. So that makes for 4. Then the 5th one is the base of boundless space. Then the 6th is the base of boundless consciousness. The 7th is the base of nothingness. So these are the 7 stations of consciousness where beings exist. So if you become tired of these things, slowly you will make an end of ill. The 8 things refers to the 8 worldly conditions. That means pleasure and pain, gain and loss, fame and ill repute, and then praise and blame. These are the 8 worldly conditions that move beings. We want one and we don't want the second type. For example, we want gain and we don't want loss. We want pleasure, we don't want pain. We want to be famous, we don't want to have a bad reputation. We want to be praised, we don't want to be blamed. So if you are tired of all these worldly conditions, you feel revulsion for it, slowly you are on your way out of samsara. The 9 things refers to the 9 abodes of beings. Just now we heard the 7 stations of consciousness, plus 2 other abodes of beings is the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, and the asanya satta. Asanya satta refers to those beings without perception. If a being does not have perception, basically he has also no consciousness. This is a type of being in the 4th jhana plane. So these are the 9 abodes of beings. If you are tired of it, also you are on your way out of samsara. Then the last one is the 10 wrong ways of action or karma. That means the 3 wrong ways of body karma, the 4 wrong ways of verbal karma, and the 3 wrong ways of mental karma. What are the 3 wrong body karmas or evil body karma? Killing, stealing, committing adultery. These are the 3 wrong body karmas. The 4 verbal one is lying, carrying tales, so that as to make people quarrel and fight. That means you hear somebody talk bad about some person and you repeat it elsewhere, and you cause people to quarrel and fight. Then the 3rd one is coarse speech or rough speech, and then the 4th one is gossip or unbeneficial talk, pointless talk. And then the 3 mental evil karma is covetousness, excessive greed, excessive hatred, and having wrong view. So these are the 10 wrong karmas. So if a person feels revulsion for these things described, then he is on his way out of samsara, out of the round of rebirths.